Good afternoon. How y'all doing? Yeah? You having a great day? Yeah? Awesome. Well, I hope you've had a meaningful, energizing day so far. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our afternoon keynote speaker, the dynamic, the fearless, where's she at? There she's at. Jacqueline Wales. Jacqueline is an accomplished author, TED Talk speaker. Thank you. You got applause already. You can be done.
I'll just keep going.
Jacqueline is an accomplished author, TED Talk speaker, and the creator of Transformational Strategies for Success, a suite of programs designed to help individuals deepen their self-awareness, strengthen their emotional intelligence, and enhance communication skills. Her work empowers people to step into their full potential with confidence and with clarity. You may have seen her TED Talk, Unleash the Power of Fear, The Secret to Success and Happiness, which has resonated with audiences around the world. Jacqueline has an extraordinary ability to help people understand fear is not something to be avoided, but instead it's something to work with, and that if you embrace it in the pursuit of growth and success, it can be your friend. Her upcoming book, Unleashing the Power of Fear, will be released in fall of 2025, and all of you have a special sneak peek access to the book. So Jacqueline has made available to us the first couple chapters of the book. She'll tell you about that if you didn't stop by her table, so you can make sure to get a sneak peek of what I'm sure is going to be the predominant book that we're talking about in this subject for many, many years to come. We are thrilled to share that e-version with you. She's excited for you to read it and to get her some feedback for it. And with that, I just want to turn it back over to Jacqueline. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. And if you're at the back of the room and you want to come forward, because it feels awfully empty down here, it would be really nice to see your faces. So I don't know if you want to bring yourselves this way, but if not, I'm sure you can hear me, which is just fine. So, who wants to give fear the finger this afternoon? Yes! Let's give fear the finger. All right, let me ask you something. Have you ever driven a car with a handbrake on? You probably call it the emergency brake. You know how it is. You press the accelerator, the engine groans like it's dying, and something feels completely off. You're pushing forward, but everything's fighting you. And there's an annoying beeping sound that you completely ignore. And then there's that moment when you go, oh shit, I didn't let the handbrake off. So you release it. And the car surges forward, and it's been unleashed, and suddenly your journey is smooth. Raise your hand if you've done this. And don't lie, because I know you have, for sure. All right, let me see here. My thing is not moving, so let me move it forward. Why are you not moving? Because it doesn't want to move. Hold on a second. Here we go. All right, I got it. You see, my handbrake is on, and I got to get this fixed before we go any further. So here's the embarrassing part for you, and I'm not talking metaphorical here. I literally drove an old VW Beetle in London for 3 months with a handbrake on because I thought that was just how old cars sounded. I was 20 years old and clueless, and it was my first car, and brilliant me just assumed that that's how old cars sounded. And when someone finally pointed it out that, you know, this is what's going on, my first thing wasn't gratitude, it was, well, shit. That explains a lot. And sad to say, that same level of cluelessness applied to the rest of my life. So here's what I've come to know after decades of hard-earned and sometimes painful experiences. Most of us are driving our lives and our careers with the handbrake on and ignoring all the noise. And that handbrake is fear. Fear of failure, judgment, success, humiliation, loss, rejection, not being good enough, not being valued, worthy, or deserving, and it all leads to driving with the handbrake on. Fear is your car burning the wrong kind of gas. You filled it with diesel instead of unleaded. And I can tell you from experience that your car won't travel far if you do that. In fact, you'll barely make it out of the parking lot. I did that once in France with 3 kids in the car and a dog in the middle of the night. It wasn't pretty, and we had to be towed out of there. So here's what I know after living with fear for over 70 years. I want you to get that number, 70. Fear is the fuel that generates a change of direction. But only if you're willing to take the damned handbrake off and drive. Fear is not a stop sign, it's a signal. Fear isn't weakness. Fear isn't a character flaw. Fear is data. Think of it like a dashboard light in your car. It's telling you something important. But instead of checking under the hood, most of us just ignore it, or worse, slam on the brakes. Driving through life with the handbrake on, fear will tell you exactly where you're stuck, exactly where you stopped growing, and exactly where you're playing small. But what's your typical response? Avoidance, control, overthinking, and emotional paralysis. When fear strikes, we numb it, we micromanage it, or we ignore it. And I'm sorry to say, none of that works. So let me paint you a picture of where my handbrake story really began. I was born in Leith, the port of Edinburgh in Scotland, which you might presume from this strange accent of mine. Not exactly the fancy part of town that everybody today seems to love. This is where generations of my ancestors experienced poverty, violence, alcoholism, disappointment, and a whole lot of anger. Fear wasn't just an emotion in my childhood. It was like the weather. It was just there, all the time, in the air that we breathed. My first memory, I'm 3 years old, hiding under a table while my father throws a vase at my mother. And I'm thinking, even at 3, this can't be normal, right? But what do I know? I'm 3. My tiny brain is absolutely mental. All these chemicals swarming like angry bees, releasing stress hormones rushing to my defense. Adrenaline, dopamine, cortisol, the whole fight or flight cocktail. And my response? I froze, like a deer in headlights, except the headlights were my chaotic family life. By 5 years old, I'm hiding in the wardrobe, barely breathing, hoping that my father, who's built like a bodybuilder from working in the docks, won't find me. And that's where the handbrake first locked into place. And here's what's crazy. Over time, with repeated acts of violence, physical and mental, these stress hormones became like a car alarm that wouldn't turn off. And the result, I was hyper-vigilant to anything that felt like a threat, real or imagined. By 15, I'm done with school, and at 16, I'm out of the house, heading to London. And you might be thinking, oh, she must be very desperate. No, I was terrified. Terrified, absolutely, of becoming like my parents, terrified of disappearing into the same black hole that had swallowed my mother's dreams of becoming a professional singer. Drugs and alcohol fueled my fear as effectively as any gas you put in your car. So there I am at 19, pregnant, with no idea who the father is, and I'm thinking, and excuse my language, what the fuck? What do I do now? At 20 years old, I'm lying in a hospital bed after giving birth. There's a social worker standing there with papers. Everything's arranged for the adoption that I had planned. Smart decision, right? Logical, responsible. But as I'm holding my daughter, something just breaks open inside of me. I'm flooded with tears, and this primal fear is bigger than anything I've ever felt. I can't let her go, and I make a split-second decision to take her home. Except, and here's the kicker, I don't have a home to take her to. That desperate experiment lasted exactly 3 months until I spiraled into a place so dark I almost did serious damage to myself and to her. That night I realized I'm becoming the very thing that I've been running from, a parent passing pain forward like some twisted family heirloom. I gave up my daughter for adoption, and let me tell you, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. That moment shattered me into 1,000 pieces, but it also started to shape me. I got married, had another child, then divorced, and moved across the ocean and continent to San Francisco, leaving my son behind with his father. And that's a whole other story that we don't have time for today. But read the book, you'll learn more about it. I met my husband of 45 years and went on to have 3 more children, including my stepdaughters from Thailand. We made a good life, and after years of therapy, coaching, 5 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and deep self-analysis, I thought I had convinced myself the handbrake was off. I'm thinking, I got this fear thing figured out. I was so wrong, it's almost funny. Fast forward to 2008, financial meltdown. My husband and I lose almost everything, and I mean everything. Our life savings gone. Fear wasn't just driving with the handbrake on anymore. It was like it had parked in my garage with the engine running, and I was slowly suffocating on the exhaust fumes. One day I'm living this comfortable, creative life. The next I'm staring into a financial abyss with no safety net. I'm 54 years old with no corporate resume, no business experience, and no obvious path forward. And I'm thinking, really? At 54? This is when life decides to test me? Well, amid the chaos and the deep uncertainty, I realized something huge. Fear wasn't the problem. It was a signpost pointing directly towards areas that needed healing, growth, and attention. Here's what I discovered in these dark, scary moments. Fear is the most honest emotion you can have. It's like the friend who doesn't sugarcoat anything. You know the one. You're in a meeting trying to sound like you know what you're talking about, and your fear is under the table kicking you, going, you have no idea what you're saying, and neither does anyone else in the room. Brutal honesty, uncomfortable as hell, but at least it's real. Fear doesn't often look like fear. It looks like indecision, perfectionism, control, procrastination, or my personal favorite, taking care of everyone but yourself. Does anybody in this room relate to that one? Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a few nodding heads out there. And here's something to consider. What if your deepest fears are pointing directly to your most important purpose? And I know you've done work on purpose today during these sessions. This is an important piece, because we can't find our purpose until we really define what our fears are. What if the very thing that terrifies you contains the seeds of your greatest contribution to your life? Fear will take charge and drive you, whether you're aware of it or not. Take a walk through any office building, and you'll see fear behind the wheel everywhere. There's the micromanaging boss, who's absolutely terrified of being exposed as someone who doesn't actually know what they're doing. And right next to them is the high performer, who would rather eat glass than ask for help because they're convinced it makes them look weak. Down the hall, someone's staying silent in meetings, even though they know the answer, because they're paralyzed by the thought of sounding stupid. And in the corner office, there's an executive bullying their team because they're desperately afraid of losing control. The cost of these behaviors is astronomical in innovation, in real leadership, in genuine connection, and ultimately in creating a life that feels worth living. And right now, fear is running the show in ways many of us feel and maybe refuse to acknowledge. According to Harvard Business School research, 85% of employees admit to withholding ideas, concerns, or innovations because they're afraid of the consequences. We're not just talking about hurt feelings here. We're talking about billions in lost innovation, preventable disasters that have been avoided, and breakthrough solutions that never see the daylight because someone was too afraid to speak up. In her book, The Fearless Organization, Dr. Amy Edmondson speaks about psychological safety. You may have heard something about that today also in the things you attended. It isn't the absence of discomfort, it's the presence of courage. I used to say in my earlier books, The Fearless Factor and The Fearless Factor at Work, be fearless, see where it gets you. But I've changed my mind about that. Being fearless is actually almost impossible, unless, of course, you're Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. Today, I want you to think about fear as being fear intelligent. And this is important here. What it means is to examine the stories you tell yourself. Ask if they're true. Do you have empirical evidence? And if not, are you prepared to confront the real story and make the changes that you need to make? Being fear intelligent isn't about being afraid, or not feeling afraid, I should say. It's about having the courage to take the next step and the next step until you're confident you can handle whatever shows up. Workplaces that embrace fear-intelligent cultures commit to psychological safety and outperform those that don't. And when people are given permission to feel fear, name it, and move through it, they innovate, they challenge, and they connect. And in a world facing unprecedented challenges, we can't afford to have our brightest minds paralyzed by fear of failure, or our most innermost spirits silenced by the fear of judgment, or our natural leaders hiding behind the fear of visibility. Now, before I tell you how to turn fear into rocket fuel, which I'm sure you're all anxious to hear, let me warn you about something that I wish someone had warned me about earlier. Resistance. Oh, resistance is fear's most talented little actor. It shows up the moment, and I mean the exact moment, you decide to change something important. But it doesn't announce itself as fear. That would be too obvious. Instead, it shows up wearing reasonable clothes, sounding totally logical and justified. I'll start tomorrow when I'm less busy. I need to research this more before I begin. I deserve a break first. I've become a master at convincing myself that avoiding what matters is productivity. I can't start that difficult project because I first need to clean out my inbox. And 3 hours later, I'm organizing digital photos from 2015 and patting myself on the back for being so damn productive. Meanwhile, what matters hasn't moved an inch, not even a millimeter. Sound familiar? Anyone else in this room can relate to that? Okay, nod your heads. I can't see you, but you better nod your head because I know you've done it. Here's what happens every time you shake hands with resistance. You're looking fear in the eye and saying, you win this round. It feels like relief in the moment. You don't have to face the discomfort of having to make any kind of change or confrontation. But you're probably strengthening the exact patterns that you're trying to break. You see, our brains are great movie makers. When we're afraid, our internal director starts creating these imaginary disaster films that feel so real, we act like they've already happened. I don't know about you, but I've watched myself do that hundreds of times. My brain will cook up some elaborate scenario where everything goes wrong, complete with dialogue and special effects, and suddenly I'm convinced I can't move forward because I've already seen how badly this is going to go. Resistance will hijack your thinking faster than you can say, I'm just being practical. It'll convince you that avoidance is wisdom, that retreat is self-care, and that staying small is staying safe. And here's the really diabolical part. It'll flood your mental engine with distractions so compelling, you'll forget where you were going in the first place. Don't believe your own bullshit. What has made the difference in my relationship with fear? The choice to see fear as my ally instead of my enemy. That was a turning point. It was a game changer, and everything shifted. Was it easy? Hell no. There were setbacks, there were stumbles, there were face plants, and each failure, each moment when I felt completely vulnerable and exposed, became like going to school, strengthening my resolve and sharpening my focus. Learning to stop fear run my thinking and behavior was like learning to drive all over again. I had to figure out how to trust myself, to stop running from every difficult conversation, make commitments I could actually live up to, embrace my decisions, and quit second-guessing myself into paralysis. And I learned something important. The fear of change is greater than the fear of staying the same. And I had zero intention of staying the same. Because we are, after all, organic beings. We should be growing, not dying. I have an exercise that I call the fear meditation, and I would love for you to take a minute or two to do this exercise with me, and it means that you get to actually close your eyes. Isn't that a nice idea? You've been thinking and watching all day long. So now I want you to just sit quietly and close your eyes. And I want you to take 2 deep breaths. Just bring yourself to center. 1 more. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions to ask yourself with your eyes closed. If I reflect on where I resist change, what am I most afraid of? Where do you feel it in your body? What's the story you're telling yourself about it? And is that story true? And what are you denying yourself by not moving forward? And I want you to take 1 more deep breath and open your eyes. How'd that feel? Comfortable? Uncomfortable? This might be the first time you've actually thought about what this is actually all about. You got to do a lot more of that. The first time I tried this, I realized my fear wasn't some abstract concept. It was literally sitting in my gut like I'd swallowed a brick. All these years of my just push through it mentality. And it turns out that fear has a physical address. Go figure. I'm sure your fear has a physical address too. Your stomach, your shoulders, a lot of places. And we carry our stress in our bodies, and if we're not careful, that stress will lead to illness, which is something to consider. So here's a completely different way to look at it. What if fear isn't a wall you have to break through, but a compass pointing you towards what matters most? Every time you feel fear, it's trying to show you something significant. Fear of public speaking? Who wants to be up here with me right now? Probably not a lot of you. There you go. It's pointing towards your desire to be heard and make an impact. Fear of real intimacy is pointing towards your desire for and a longing for genuine connection. And fear of failure, that's your ambition that's speaking and your desire for growth. And fear of success, that's your soul saying it's time to expand your idea of who you are. Going through the adoption process, someone gave me this quote from Khalil Gibran. He said, "Children are part of life's longing for itself." And something about that helped me understand that life is this continuous flow. Everything is a passage we must pass through. When I was writing my first book, When the Crow Sings, which I hope some of you managed to grab a copy out from my table outside, it tells a semi-autobiographical story of 3 generations of women in my family having children outside of marriage, and how it spills over from generation to generation until one woman has the courage to give her child up for adoption. Sound familiar? Yeah. It took me 12 years to write that book, and it was a journey to explore the generational traumas that had influenced my family. Turns out there's a lot of people can relate to that. I had an obligation to tell my kids, or to write this book, so that they wouldn't repeat it, and they would have a history of my side of the family. Of course, the irony is they haven't read it. Maybe when I'm dead. Before I published this book, a writing coach shared this letter from Martha Graham, written to Agnes de Mille, who were 2 of the great dancers of the 20th century. And it spoke to the feeling we all have about the need to express ourselves in the work we do, and the hesitation we feel in sharing it. Graham wrote, "There is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, that expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and be lost. The world will not have it. It's not your business to determine how it is, nor how valuable it is, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, and to keep the channel open. And when you keep the channel open, there's only a queer divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than others." And I wanted to add to this, when life opens doors, you must choose to look inside. You must look deep and find out who you really are, what actually matters to you, and discover there's so much more to you than you ever gave yourself credit for. This is the point of living a fear-intelligent life. So I have one more exercise I want to give you. I call it fear dating. I want you to make a date with your fear. This week, and I mean this week, not someday when you feel like you're ready for it, pick one small fear, just one. Speak up in that meeting. Say no to something you always say yes to. Say yes to something that scares the hell out of you. And ask the question you've been avoiding, and start the thing you've been putting off. Feel uncomfortable, because here's the truth. Nothing grows in the comfort zone. Nothing. And then I ask you, do it again, because it's only through the practice will you start to have the confidence to handle the fears that come your way. Here's what's funny about us humans. We spend our whole lives searching for guarantees. We want certainty because, that's just what it is before we move. But here's the only guarantee that I can give you. Uncertainty. That's it. That's all any of us get, in fact. Uncertainty can mask itself as self-doubt, and it stops you before you've even had a chance to explore options. It steals your best ideas and shoves them in a drawer. It stops you from taking risks and being more courageous in how you show up. Remember, fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal. Susan Jeffers, who wrote a book many, many years ago called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, and I still have people quoting that title to me, and she endorsed my first book, The Fearless Factor, said something that changed how I think about everything. Fear is our inability to trust we can handle whatever comes our way. It asks me to trust myself. And I want to ask you, do you trust yourself? Because if you don't, then fear will have the upper hand. And that's just simply how it works. So here's what will help you to get beyond fear. First, understand that fear is mostly your imagination on steroids, with some chemical reactions thrown in for drama. And second, you can refuse to let fear overwhelm you by not buying into the urge to run, to deny, or distract yourself. For me, with organizing photos from 2015. And third, get clear on who you are, what matters to you, and what stories you keep telling yourself. Just as a reminder, if you don't have empirical evidence for those stories, you're simply making shit up, and you're driving yourself crazy with it. Oh, and one more thing. I didn't make it this far without a lot of people who supported me, challenged me, and occasionally told me I was an idiot. So find your people. When you have people who believe in you, it makes it a whole lot easier to believe in yourself. Learning how to stop letting fear shape my thinking and behavior was a gradual process. I'm often asked, what was the lightning bolt moment? There wasn't any. There was a lot of different steps along the way. But it helped me increase my confidence, because here's the other thing, confidence is a learned process. We're not born with it. We learn how to bring that out in ourselves. And it didn't happen overnight. No magic bullets. I needed to learn how to trust myself. And as I said earlier, stop avoiding confrontations, make commitments I could live up to, embrace my decisions, and stop second-guessing them. And I have a feeling that there's many of you in this room who do the same things that I used to do. I need to learn that I could release the handbrake, learn how to trust myself, and also handle the self-doubt, expanding my confidence and allowing others to trust me more. Facing your fear is the greatest gift you can give yourself and everyone you care about. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's where all the power lies. Fear has become my greatest teacher, my North Star. It gave me an opportunity to explore and understand myself and this whole crazy human experience. And here's what happened. I achieved more in my lifetime than I ever thought possible growing up in Leith, Scotland. I've written 4 books, started a coaching business with nothing more than a decent idea and absolutely no business sense. I became a keynote speaker, a professionally trained singer, a lay cantor for synagogues in Paris and Amsterdam, earned a black belt in Shotokan karate, gave a TEDx talk, and I've been a global nomad who's lived on 3 continents. And I've been with my husband for 45 years. And we still look at each other with great surprise. Wow, you definitely are still here? Yep, we are. There we go. After my spectacular early disappointments as a mother, I figured it out. I now have healthy, loving relationships with my 4 kids, including my son in England, who I talk with almost every week. And I have 3 lovely granddaughters that I completely adore. And my adopted daughter, she wrote me many years ago to say she had a good life and is happy. And in 1 generation, I have shifted the patterns of what a family means. And that is my greatest achievement. Thank you. If you told teenage me in Leith that this was my future, I would have asked you what drugs you were on and if you had any to spare. The gap between who we are and who we could become is often just the width of our fear. All of this meant facing down my fears of not being good enough, not capable, not deserving, and not valued, and finding the courage to claim true ownership and authority of my life. So let me leave you with this. Think about this deeply. What would change in your life or career if you saw fear as fuel instead of a stop sign? That's question number 1. What if you trusted yourself to take your next bold step without waiting for perfect conditions or guaranteed outcomes? And what if you stopped negotiating with fear like it was some reasonable advisor and started treating it like what it really is, resistance to your own growth. For me, deciding to start over at 54 after our financial collapse wasn't fearless. Are you kidding me? It was absolutely terrifying. But fear wasn't the end of the road. It was just the beginning of a journey to reclaim myself, to find my courage, and discover what I was really meant to do, which, surprise, surprise, has brought me here today. When you learn to use fear as fuel, it'll guide you towards a more expansive future and open your life to more love, more acceptance, more joy than you ever thought possible. So here's my final thoughts for you today. You are a human being having a human experience, which means you will feel fear. This is not a design flaw, it's a feature. Your fears are information about what matters to you, where you need to grow, and how you can serve. The world needs what you have to offer. It needs your unique perspective, your hard-won wisdom, your authentic voice. It needs you to stop hiding behind the comfortable lie that you're not ready, not qualified, not enough. You are enough. You've never been more ready than you are right now. You've never been more qualified than you are in this moment. And you've always been enough. You just forgot. Your fear has been your teacher, your compass, and when properly understood, your fuel. Everything you've been running from has been running to catch up with you, to give you exactly what you need for the next level of your evolution. The transformation starts now. Not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are perfect, and not when fear finally leaves you alone, because it never will. It's now. Because now is all you've ever had, and now is all you'll ever need. So take the brake off, trust your engine, and drive forward. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.